One day, I received a call from my son, Matthew. "Where's Dad now? Is there something you need?" If you're looking for Dad, he's working at the headquarters now and staying in the company's dorm for singles. For a while, Matthew was silent, then he started speaking hesitantly. "There's no such dorm at Dad's company." "Why would you know something like that?" According to Matthew, while he was job hunting, he attended a joint company information session. My husband Brian's company was also participating, and other students were asking if there was a dorm for singles. He remembered that. Why would he lie about going to a singles dorm? I felt uneasy. Matthew's silence continued. "Do you know something, Matthew?" "This is a bit hard to say, but it seems like Dad is having an affair." "Could you have mistaken him for someone else?" "I understand how you feel, Mom, but it was definitely Dad." Now it was my turn to fall silent. I didn't know what to say. My hand trembled as I held the receiver. "I'm Jessica, 43, a housewife. I live with my husband, Brian, 45. Our son, Matthew, 23, left home when he entered university. We get along well with my in-laws, who occasionally visit our home. I've heard from friends that having the mother-in-law over is usually unwelcome. But I don't mind it, having chats with them is a nice distraction. My father-in-law, Joseph, 68, and my mother-in-law, Stephanie, 67, get along well and often go out together. They never skip their daily walk for health. Today, my in-laws stopped by after their walk to bring some donuts from a nearby shop. I love those donuts, so I can't help but smile. I made coffee for my in-laws, and we enjoyed the donuts together. Eating something delicious makes everyone smile. Matthew called the other day. Seems like he's doing well. I wonder if he's managing okay as a working adult. I'm worried. Matthew will be fine. He's responsible and considerate, the type everyone likes. I hope so. Jessica, you need to let go a bit. I understand the worry, but Matthew is a grown man now. Matthew loves his grandparents. He's been contacting them regularly since his university days. I always wonder why he calls at exactly 8:50 in the evening. I wondered why. Noticing my curiosity, Joseph began to explain. Most people watch dramas after 9 p.m., so he calls during the commercial breaks. Calling after 9 p.m. would interrupt the drama, which would be inconvenient. That made sense to me. Such thoughtfulness made me think he would do well in his career too. That night, I mentioned to Brian that his parents had visited. But his reaction was tepid. I couldn't help but wonder if his teenage rebellion phase was still ongoing. Brian and his parents don't seem very close. So, the conversation ended with that one word, failing to continue. My in-laws are friendly and gentle. It's hard to believe Brian is their son. While we were dating, he was always smiling and gentlemanly, always walking on the side closer to the road. But after we got married, Brian changed completely. His tone became arrogant, acting as if he was supporting me by himself. I wonder if the fault lies with Brian for deceiving me, or with myself for not seeing through him. Now, it feels like our child is the only thing keeping us together. But Brian seemed unusually cheerful today. I've been transferred to work at the headquarters this time. Finally, my luck is turning around. That's great to hear. I was pleased, for a different reason. I hoped an increase in salary would mean he could contribute more to our living expenses. Brian only gives me the money for living expenses, managing the finances himself. I don't even know how much he earns. Up until now, we've just managed to cover our living costs, but it's been a life without any extras. I hoped this would allow us to live a little more comfortably. However, His next words shattered that hope. I've decided to stay in the company's dorm for singles for the time being. It's too far to commute from here, and renting a room would cost too much. I had no objections to Brian's working away from home. In fact, I was all for it. You'll be on your own, so I'll be reducing the money a bit. My living expenses are involved too, so this amount should be fine, right? The amount he mentioned was less than half of what it is now. With this, even one person couldn't live properly. If you're short on money, you should just get a part-time or whatever you like to do. I was so astonished that he left me speechless. You don't have to force yourself to come see me. The fare's a waste, and the dorm is off limits to women anyway. Not that I had any intention of going, but the idea of living expenses being cut by more than half was unbelievable. You're getting promoted, aren't you? Why reduce the living expenses? That's weird. I'm not saying I won't give you living expenses. If you're not happy with it, how about I stop giving any? I had no choice but to remain silent when he said that. Who would want to visit such a terrible husband, I thought. However, I didn't realize that this was a cunning way to make me lose the desire to visit Brian. Reluctantly, I decided to work a part-time job. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have enough for my own food expenses. I visited the employment center for the first time. Many people were there seeking jobs. I printed out the details of the companies I was interested in and waited for my turn. It must have been nearly an hour before it was finally my turn. They contacted the company for me. They said I could have an interview right away. It was close to my home and convenient for commuting. The place I visited based on the address was a small office in a mixed-use building. When I knocked on the door and entered, the office was quite different from what I had imagined. It had a homely atmosphere. The person in charge of the interview was very nice. He introduced himself as David. He was just my type. I honestly told him that I had not worked since getting married and was anxious. This place isn't noisy, and if anything comes up, you can tell me. After a simple question, they said they would contact me later, and I left the office. I was contacted soon after for the job. The work was simple clerical work, and the female colleague teaching me the job was a friendly person. Especially David, who conducted the interview, was considerate towards me and always made a point to talk to me. We were about the same age and very easy to talk to. I decided to enjoy living alone, stopping by a cafe for coffee on the way home. However, it was a mistake to inform Brian of my current situation. The freedom I had finally obtained was quickly taken away. Brian continued to control me. Brian would call home in the evening. If I didn't answer, he would persistently ask the next day why I didn't. Moreover, even if I did answer the phone, he would call again an hour later or 30 minutes later, irregularly 2 or 3 times. I argued back. I became unable to leave the house from the evening. He intended not to give me any freedom. Then one day, I got a call from Matthew. "Where's Dad now? Is there something you need? If you're looking for Dad, he's working at the headquarters now and staying in the company's dorm for singles." For a while, Matthew was silent, then he started speaking hesitantly. "There's no such dorm at Dad's company." "Why would you know something like that?" According to Matthew, while he was job hunting, he attended a joint company information session. Brian's company was also participating, and other students were asking if there was a dorm for singles. The company's representative said there wasn't a dorm, but they provide housing assistance. Why would he lie about going to a singles dorm? I felt uneasy. Matthew's silence continued. "Do you know something, Matthew?" "This is a bit hard to say, but it seems like Dad is having an affair." Just when I thought he was about to start talking, he began to reveal something unbelievable. Today, he was making sales calls with a colleague. "We're going to this company next." The company his colleague pointed out was the one Brian worked for. He might run into Brian. He wondered what kind of face he should make if that happened. Brian and Matthew don't get along. They have been on bad terms since Matthew's rebellious teenage years. Today's visit was just to greet the sales manager in charge. The meeting ended quickly. It was past 5 p.m. His colleague said they were heading straight home and that he could go home too. Even though Matthew had a strained relationship with his father, he thought he should greet him as a business courtesy, if possible. Not sure if he would see him, Matthew waited outside the company for a while to see if Brian would come out. He saw someone who looked like Brian and was about to call out to him. However, a young woman came running after Brian. Brian, with a smile he never showed at home, started walking with the woman. Matthew thought something was suspicious and hid himself. The woman appeared to be about Matthew's age. She was beautiful and seemed to have a great figure. Brian, unaware of Matthew's presence, leaned in close to the woman and headed into the night. They entered a fancy restaurant and, after about an hour, went into a chic bar. Matthew followed them, feeling like a detective, but had to make sure he wasn't found. Moreover, it was tough because he had to stay in the area for a long time without looking out of place. And then came the problem. Unfortunately, the two disappeared into a motel. I was shaken when I heard Matthew's story.
"Could you have mistaken him for someone else?"
"Mom, I understand how you feel, but it was definitely Dad." Now it was my turn to fall silent. I didn't know what to say. My hand trembled as I held the receiver. Brian was having an affair. And with a woman about the same age as our son. My mind went blank. "Mom, are you okay? I'll take care of this, so just pretend you don't know for a while. Do you have a plan?" "Yeah, I won't let Dad get away with this." "Making you sad, I won't forgive him." I was grateful for Matthew's strong words. He was all I could rely on now. Almost a month had passed since then. There had been no contact from Matthew, and I was getting anxious. The regular calls from Brian kept coming. I wanted to confront him about the affair, but I followed Matthew's advice and said nothing. The thought of him going to a motel with a young woman, about the same age as Matthew, made me dizzy with anger. And the two of them would mock me in my dreams.
"We have no use for an old woman anymore. Go away. Don't show up in front of us. I don't want to see your dreary face anymore."
How many times did I have that same dream? Each time, I woke up tormented. I even started falling asleep at work.
"Jessica, you look pale. Are you not feeling well?"
I haven't been able to sleep well recently.
"Sounds like insomnia. Do you have something on your mind?"
I couldn't tell the truth, so I gave a vague response. Amid these restless days, I received a happy message from Matthew. He wanted to throw a party with his first paycheck to buy presents for everyone. He wanted to give out the presents at my in-laws' house over the weekend.
"You don't have to go through the trouble. But still, I'm happy."
It felt real that Matthew had become a working adult. "I can't give anything fancy, but look forward to it." He didn't bring up Brian's affair. Not wanting to spoil the celebration, I didn't either. And so the weekend came and I went to my in-laws' house early to help prepare the party food. It feels like just yesterday he was wearing a backpack, and now he's a working adult. Time flies, doesn't it?
We age in the blink of an eye too.
I feel like it was just yesterday that Matthew was born. What my in-laws said felt very real to me. Brian was supposed to come today too. How many months has it been since we last met? Should I confront him about the affair? I was troubled by the thought. I laid out the dishes Stephanie and I had prepared on the table. When the doorbell rang, it was Matthew. "You're early. Joseph and Stephanie have been looking forward to seeing you." Seeing Matthew after a long time, he seemed a bit more grown up. Going into society must have matured him. "You must be tired. Come in and relax." The in-laws were delighted that Matthew had come. Joseph even came to the entrance to greet him.
"Good to see everyone's well. Thanks for preparing all this today."
Matthew was surrounded by us and led into the living room. While I was preparing drinks for everyone, Matthew was bombarded with questions. "Have you gotten used to your job? Are you being bullied?
"Are you eating properly?"
The in-laws had a mountain of questions, one after the other. Matthew answered all the questions without showing any sign of displeasure.
"Everyone's taking good care of me, and little by little, I'm being entrusted with more work. Plus, I'm getting along with everyone. We get proper meals in the dormitory morning and evening, so there's no need to worry."
Knowing that Matthew was fitting in at the company seemed to reassure the in-laws.
"Still, Brian is late. The food will get cold."
While we were talking about it, the doorbell rang. It was Brian, as expected. "Sorry for being late. Work just wouldn't end." And so the dinner started. We prepared dishes with Matthew's favorites as the main. Matthew kept saying how delicious everything was. In contrast, Brian was eating with a sullen face. After the meal, we moved to the living room. It was finally time for Matthew to give out his presents. First, for Grandma and Grandpa, this. What was handed to Joseph was a long box tied with a ribbon.
"I wonder what it is. Let me open it."
"Please do. It's something Grandpa has been wanting." It was a fountain pen from a famous overseas brand. Joseph often had occasions to write, and I had heard that he longed for this fountain pen. It was impressive that Matthew remembered such a conversation. Stephanie was given a hat. It suited her very well. A must-have for fashion. Wear it a lot. The in-laws had tears in their eyes.
"We'll use it with care. It will be a treasure.
Just don't keep it tucked away in a drawer because it's too precious. It's meaningless if you don't use it."
"We know. We will use it properly."
For Mom, this. It was a tasteful brooch. "Let's go shopping together next time. I'll help you find clothes that match this brooch." I felt tears welling up too. Brian watched us with a cold eye. "What will you give me?" "I'm looking forward to it." Matthew's expression suddenly changed.
"For Dad, this."
Matthew handed over a large envelope. Brian, with a puzzled look, spread its contents on the table. Several photographs came out. And as soon as Brian saw the photos, the color drained from his face. Brian tried to hide the photos, but it was too late.
"What is this?"
"It's nothing. Just a joke from Matthew, right?" Brian glared at Matthew.
"It's not a joke. The report is inside the envelope."
Matthew took out a report from the envelope. It detailed Brian's actions. The affair partner was Nicole, 24 years old, a woman from Brian's department.
"What are you doing? And with a woman not much older than your son, are you out of your mind?"
Joseph's voice was filled with anger, and Brian shrank back. Usually gentle, when Joseph got angry, his intensity was formidable.
"Using your salary for this, you should spend it on better things."
Brian, unable to come up with an excuse, started shouting something incomprehensible. "It's your fault I had to spend money on this. Apologize to Mom." Stephanie started crying out loud. "It's my fault for raising such a son. Jessica, forgive me." Stephanie apologized deeply in front of me.
It's not your fault, Stephanie. Please, don't apologize.
I couldn't let Stephanie apologize like this. I told her,
I also have my faults. It's not your fault at all.
Brian, explain yourself. Brian, as if resigned, began to talk about the affair. Nicole had joined the company the year before last. Brian was assigned as her mentor for the new employees. Although Brian was taciturn at home, outside he always wore a smile and played the role of a refreshing man. It seemed only a matter of time before Nicole was drawn to such a Brian. She apparently found young men unsatisfying. Her attraction to a somewhat bad older man was also due to her family background. Nicole was raised in a single-parent family. Perhaps she longed for a father figure. Or maybe she was just waiting for Brian's invitation. They soon became involved. It turns out the transfer to the headquarters was true. They rented an apartment and started living together. So, the reason my living expenses were cut was to fund the apartment. He was worried I might cheat too, because he was having an affair himself. That's why those persistent evening calls happened. Despite his own infidelity, he couldn't bear the thought of me cheating. Such a selfish way of thinking. Not that I had any intention of cheating, though.
I'm cutting ties with you. I'll get Jessica a top-notch lawyer and make you pay the maximum compensation. Get out of this house right now.
Brian fled the house as if running from Joseph's wrath. The in-laws kept apologizing.
Jessica, you don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of everything. We'll even provide financial support.
You don't have to go that far. I have Matthew.
That's not necessary, Grandpa. No, let me do this. I won't be satisfied otherwise.
Trust us, Jessica. In reality, I couldn't even afford to consult a lawyer, so I had no choice but to rely on their offer. The proceedings went smoothly. Brian seemed to be deeply in love with Nicole. He was willing to lose everything as long as he had Nicole. The divorce settlement recognized economic abuse, adding alimony to the compensation. Unpaid living expenses and other funds were also included, amounting to a significant sum. After paying the compensation, Brian was left with almost nothing. I acquired the house as part of the divorce property distribution, under the condition that I continue paying the mortgage, which the in-laws paid as an apology. Brian and Nicole's affair became well known at the company. Nicole, mentally distressed, quit her job and returned to her parents' home. She had dreams and had been saving money. But now, far from realizing them, she was severely in shock. It felt as though her dreams had been devoured. While I'm not responsible for Nicole's breakdown, it still pains me. Sensing my distress, Matthew said,
Mom shouldn't worry about this. There's nothing we can do but forget.
He's right. Yet my heart is heavy. My hometown is a remote island, not easily accessible by Brian. In such a small village, I can't predict the rumors if Brian were to visit. He was advised not to come at all. Now divorced, my husband is a stranger to me. His life in an apartment is of no concern to me. We should each live our own lives, but Brian's clinginess is exasperating.
I was wrong. Let's start over. I only realized your value after losing you. Nicole was just a fling.
Brian's calls became frequent. Lately, I just let him talk and then hang up without saying a word. From what he says, his room seems quite filthy. He once sent a photo of his room via smartphone. It felt like the stench was wafting through the screen. I deleted it immediately.
I've been taken off sales duty. I keep messing up, and they say my clothes smell. It's all your fault.
To think I was married to such a man disgusts me.
How will you take responsibility? My affair is out, and I, who was once top in sales, am now relegated to compiling company history. It's as if they want me to quit.
Can't he see that it's all his fault? How much does he need to blame others before he's satisfied? Has Brian lost all reason? One day, Brian called again.
I'm coming over tonight. Be ready.
The call was abruptly ended. I was terrified. What should I do? What could Brian possibly do? Hesitantly, I called Matthew.
I'm on a business trip right now. I'll figure something out, but make sure you lock the door and don't go outside.
How he intended to handle this while on a business trip was beyond me. Regardless, I locked all the doors and secured the chain on the front door. Night fell. Too scared to turn on any lights. As I was trembling in fear, the video doorbell suddenly rang. The shock made me jump. There was a violent knocking at the front door.
I know you're in there. Open up.
At Brian's yelling, I crouched down, trembling. Then, from outside, I could hear someone arguing. Then, silence returned. The video doorbell rang. Joseph appeared on the monitor. I hurried to the front door and opened it.
You can relax now. I've chased Brian away.
Overwhelmed with relief, I broke down crying right there. Stephanie entered following the flustered Joseph.
Don't worry anymore. I won't let him near you ever again.
I invited my in-laws inside. While serving them coffee, I expressed my gratitude.
You shouldn't be the one to lower your head. We are to blame for raising such a son.
It was thanks to Matthew contacting them that my in-laws had come. They had hidden in the shadows waiting for Brian to appear. Tomorrow, I'll talk to Brian. A captain I know is looking for crew. It's deep sea fishing, and once on the ship, you can't return to States for a year.
He needs to straighten out his character. Actually, we've covered all the compensation. He will listen to us.
Even such a foolish son is dear to us. Laugh at us, thinking we're foolish parents.
Any parent would find their child dear. Jessica, you must have been worried about Nicole, the affair partner. We've returned her money. She was doing well.
We've caused you inconvenience. It must have been hard from afar. Plus, returning the money.
No, keep the money. We won't be satisfied otherwise.
Some time later, Joseph informed me that Brian had boarded the ship. Whether Brian reforms or not is no longer my concern. Now, I'm just happy that Matthew could participate in a big project at work. I hope he achieves great results there. My relationship with my in-laws is still strong, and they visit from time to time.
Jessica, you're still young. Life is ahead of you. It's too early to grow old.
I've started seeing someone. It's David from work. After Brian's infidelity, I just thought he was a good person. Talking to David every day at work, I realized I was becoming calmer, but it took me a while to understand that these feelings were more than that. It was an emotion I hadn't felt in years. Now, having divorced, I was able to face those feelings honestly and asked him out. Then David also confessed that he had fallen for me at first sight during the interview. Like the seasons come and go, spring has come again for me.